Well, good morning, and thank you all for joining the Construction Technology Forum. It's wonderful festival. It's wonderful for you to be here. We're going to have a great panel with some very interesting technology specialists and supporting the contracting and the technology aspect of digital transformation for the construction technology. We're moving the right digital projects forward from one stage to another to avoid costly mistakes with unproven technologies can be challenging, especially if digital technologies fail or have failed in the past, causing the loss of confidence with the effect to the overall business plan of both the technology company and the contractor. Well, previous failure or the lack of understanding for each new technology increases the pressure for future success, and generally with management wanting to see quick, safe wins that will align with the goals for their business expectations for digital introduction. Well, this session visits projects that have been introduced and expanded in KSA and how organizations have defined the digital strategy and the objectives to provide this success. Well, my name's Phil Higgins, and I will be the moderator for this session. And I'd like to introduce the team that are with us. So we have Aref Albalawi, the Group Manager in Digital Transformation for Consolidated Contractors company. He's also the Strategy Officer for World Economic. We have Dr. Bandar AlKahlan, the Director of the National Center for Building and Construction Technology with King Abdulaziz City for Science and Technology. We have James Frampton, the Middle East Director for Software One M2 Construction Cloud. And also joining us is Dr. Hassan Albalawi, the CEO and co-founding partner of WakeCap Technologies. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to your contribution to this discussion. And if you can keep your answers very tight and brief, it would help us get through so much more in this short period of time. I'd like to go over to Aref, please. And I understand that CCC is an investor in construction startups. And this is a tremendous initiative that the company has taken several years ago. But I was wondering if you could define for us the digital strategy that CCC has and your expectations for both investment and operational implementation of digital technologies.
Thanks, Phil. It's always a pleasure to be back with you, be it online or in person. Well, as you very well know, digital strategy usually discusses how to deploy technology to improve business, how to gain competitive advantage, how to create a new product or reimagine existing one, etc., etc. When we started a few years back, as you said, to try to adopt the fourth industrial revolution against construction project, there was no easy answer to these questions and how we can define our digital strategy with these ever-evolving innovations. That's why we seek alliance. And the first thing we did before we even established the digital strategy is to seek alliance, knowing that we cannot do it alone. One of them is the World Economic Forum and other organizations. And based on that, we established kind of vision and how the construction industry will look like in 2050 with extreme scenario, be it the virtual world, factory runs the world, or green reboot. And then we deduced what are the technologies that will disrupt our industry, which we categorize them into 10 categories. For each one, we thought how this can be deployed, very briefly, be it internal process improvement or creating a new business model and opportunity. And then for each technology we wanted to adopt, we orchestrated a set of initiatives, one or more per technology, taking a bottom-up approach, balancing it out with a little bit of top-bottom. So this is very brief on how did we deploy our digital strategy at CCC.
So what are some of the technologies that CCC have invested? What are, maybe you can share the names or at least the type of technologies that your company has invested in the past, and how have you decided which is the right technology for your business or for your investment?
Let me start with the second question, then I'll go to the first. First, what is the right technology? Based on the vision we set and the strategy in place, for each and every project we want to adopt any technology, we ask ourselves, what are the pain points? What difference can we make? What potential solutions are there in the market? That's the first dimension. Second dimension, we check, do we have startups or technology established company that can support us technology? Do we have the process in place? Do we have the internal capacity and people to drive that? And last but not least is to how we can quantify the ROI at the end of that journey. As far as investment, well, I'm very glad that Hassan is here with us. The first investment we ever did was late 2018, was in Saudi startup initiated by Hassan with us, WakeCap. And then we moved, this was IoT, Hassan will speak about it better than I do. Then we moved to 3D printing like Imensa, which is now based in Saudi Arabia, and then we move into AI, etc., etc. And this is, I'm focusing here on Phil, on the fourth industrial revolution. We were one of the first adopter of BIM in the region for 20 years. And the biggest investment we've done in BIM technology is in Riyadh Metro, a $10 billion project. And this is by far the biggest we've ever had in the world, taking BIM from initiation phase, from estimation to project operation engineering until even hopefully operation and maintenance.
Well, thank you very much. Karan, I'd like to go over to you. I understand that you are working with a relatively new player to construction technology, and you have a unique system. So I was wondering if you could just explain to us a little bit about what your company is doing worldwide and especially in Saudi Arabia.
Happy to do that, Phil. And first of all, thank you to yourself and all the panelists for taking the time today. As mentioned, my name is Karan and I work with FBR Australia. We're the world's first and so far one of the most mature players in the space of robotic construction, with our first solution essentially being robotic bricklaying. The objective, the challenge we're trying to solve, is to minimize damage to humanity in terms of dangerous, low-cost, hard work at a space where the demographics are shifting towards less and less young people moving into sort of hard labor construction across the world. So that's the introduction on the company technology. Specifically, the technology's been in development for about 15 years. We've been incorporated in Australia officially in the past 5. Our UAE and Gulf presence has been established the last 3. And that was really instigated by an MOU we signed with the Ministry of Housing in Saudi Arabia in 2015.
Very good. Is this an Australian technology? Was it developed in Australia?
Absolutely. It's the most Australian thing you could find aside from Vegemite.
I just wanted it on the record. That's all. It must be a very good technology if that's the case. So very good.
Look.
So, what is it that you're doing? What does your technology do? I understand it's something to do with block laying, or explain this to us.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd love to show a video, but in interest of time, our technology fundamentally allows you or contractors to move from a flat slab to a finished wall structure without a single human hand being involved in the laying and binding of the bricks. So we use a combination of locally sourced bricks. We've done cement and clay, and we use a construction adhesive to bind the bricks together within less than 45 minutes. What that essentially means is that the walls are laid faster, more accurately, and with significantly lower waste.
Fantastic. Where was this technology in Australia 35 years ago when I was laying blocks building tennis courts? It would have saved my back significantly. I'm there to support this technology. So we do wish you all the best.
Thank you.
I guess for you, one of the key considerations with the introduction of your technology is cost. You know, from your model, is your technology reducing the cost of construction as well as improving this safety element?
Look, Phil, I think to be completely honest, we're probably chewing off the harder bit of the technology spectrum in terms of hard, deep tech. What that essentially means are product iteration cycles are longer. There's a significant amount of capex initially. So we raised close to $100 million to come to sort of the stage we're at in terms of our learnings and efficiencies. What that essentially means is in certain parts of the world, UAE, Australia, Europe, the US, were relatively easy for us to hit the unit economics from a cost perspective. When it comes to the Gulf and parts of Asia, to be perfectly honest, we're not quite there yet. but we are trending heavily there. And I think what happens is that as we get more scale, better understanding of local processes, the technology becomes cheaper over time.
We'll come back to that because I'm curious to see how you're specifically doing moving ahead in Saudi Arabia. So that would be a great return question for you. But I'd like to head over to Dr. Bandar. Thank you for joining us today. Bandar, you come from a little different side of this. I know you're working with the Science and Technology Center there for the development of new technologies, in particular construction material, as well as technology to build certain things. I'd like you to explain a little bit further about that. Just for those that are joining us, this initiative is government funded. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Bandar, but from my investigations, this is a government funded initiative. And I was wondering if you could explain to me how this kicked forward and what is the current status of what you're doing today.
Sure. Thank you, Philip. Just to, elaborate a little bit about what you just started. KACST is the Saudi Arabian National Science Agency and its national laboratories. So this project, as you mentioned, is funded by the government and part of the Saudi Initiative 2030 vision. So we started this project because there is a huge demand. Number was released by the Ministry of Housing that there is a need for 1.5 million units, single family units, to be built. And to achieve this number, we need to look into how can we achieve this number at the fastest way, and what we call a quick wins. So we did our research and we looked at the industrial solutions existed at that time, and we were talking about 2017, and we found out there are, if we hire all the industrial solutions available at that time, it just reflected 5% of this number. So by 2023, the number they can achieve is 96,000 units, which is not what we're looking for to achieve. So then we started our research and we looked at some of the existing technology at that time, and we found out maybe if we focus on modular construction as an alternative method to a traditional way of constructing a housing, it might help to increase the number. So our goal by adapting this technology is to not only adapting the technology in terms of expediting the process. No, we want even to look into how can we automate the process of construction as well. So this is the goal, because the idea was at the beginning when we set up the project is to have kind of like a remote factories or giga factories around the kingdom that can be able to produce more than 5,000 units per year. So we're talking about 25,000 units per year. If we were able to achieve our goal, this means that we can produce 1,025 units every year to achieve the goal. So we started by looking at the unit itself. So we said, let's have like a typical Saudi family. And then we started by developing a single family home compound of four bedrooms. And we're talking about around 320 square meters. And then we looked into how can we decompose the building itself into elements and components, and then the models itself. Then, as you know, once we talk about automation, this means, there's a complex equation that you need to solve. And this is what we have been worked in the past 3 years. And we looked into the elements, the component, and the modules itself. We rethink the process. We looked into some benchmarking examples around the world. We went to Australia, USA, UK, and Japan. And we tried to start from there, where they stopped at, and to try to avoid any obstacle in their process, and develop a new process, production process as well, that will help to accommodate the end user needs, the Saudi end user needs, and the same thing, not focusing on mass production process, but mass customization process. And this is the difficult part.
Very good. Doctor, there's a question here. There's a question that's already been raised, and they're asking, can companies get access to the technologies that you're developing? So I guess from this question, it doesn't line up with specifically what you're doing. Maybe you could explain to us some of your story about developing new materials as well as technologies.
Sure.
And what is the strategy moving forward for what you've developed?
Sure. So just answering your question is, as I said, it's a very complex process, and I can say the plan is to start testing our production line the first quarter of next year, which is a great news for all the team worked in the project. So the intention is, as I said, we have developed the technology, we have developed the construction automation process. And one of the goals that we put at the beginning, that can we avoid any typical materials that we are using every day as a traditional construction method. And we moved by that not to utilize any concrete in this production line to expedite the process, because we found out if we want to use concrete, this means the production line will be slowed down because there are different the manufacturing process needs to be taken into consideration. So we looked into the existing materials as the local materials in the kingdom, and then we have developed our elements based on the local materials. And the idea, as I said, to have a complete different manufacturing and assembly process that can increase even the number of the units that we can produce every year. And at the same time, we will take it and introduce it to potential investors to scale it up from a smart factory and a proof of concept factory and take it to the giga factory scale of projects.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Well, I think that answers the question. I'd like to keep moving ahead. And James Frampton, any relation to Peter Frampton? Did you find out for me?
Oh, unfortunately still unknown, but you know, it's could well be.
Very good. Well, James, thanks for joining us. I know that you come from many years of experience within the construction technology space and have been working with Software One this year. But I was wondering if you could help us, just explain to us from a solutions provider's perspective, whose tagline is make the right choice. Okay, so your clients, how are they moving forward with digital projects from one stage to another to avoid the, costly mistakes in construction? What are you seeing from your side?
Sure. I mean, that's a great question. It's quite an open question as well, so I'll try to be brief. Basically, the biggest trend that we're finding at the moment is with organizations, not just in Saudi, but around the world, being further catalyzed by the obvious COVID difficulties everyone's had in recent years, towards a vision where collaboration within the organization is become really principal to optimize, business decisions that are made right throughout the different processes that any given construction stakeholder has to face. And the reason I mention that is because, in order to be able to collaborate and take that impact or that result into all of the different processes, you need to be able to implement a solution within any given organization that allows collaboration between all parties. So, I mean, we're talking here construction clouds, of course. This is a fundamental part of what we would call digital transformation. Obviously, as you said earlier, the M2 construction cloud is exactly that, and I'm not here to talk about that specifically, but there are so many drivers at the moment that we're seeing. A big one being sustainability and the carbon reduction. That's a big part, for example, of the Saudi 2030 vision. Your question specifically, what are we seeing? That is what we're seeing most now. Organizations from Saudi and all around the world approaching us to help them to implement their digital transformation to allow them to all of their teams to collaborate far more efficiently to give better outcomes, better decision-making potential, and to achieve a whole lot of things from time saving to cost saving to allow them to be more competitive, to making data-based or data-driven decisions throughout, and ultimately to, of course, reduce carbon reduction by doing things like saving rework in what they do. So I think that's the headline for you there, Phil.
Very good. In the brief that I received about you, I read something that I hear so often, and the specific words were end-to-end enterprise platform. I hear this a lot, but it seems to have a different meaning for different people or different technologies. Could you just sort of talk to us what your company means by an end-to-end enterprise platform? They're words that we hear a lot, so they get missed. But I also noticed from above you on your back screen, it says experience 5D BIM. What is D? What is 5D? What are the Ds associated to BIM? So 2 questions in one, go for it.
Oh, right, fantastic. Okay, here goes. So end-to-end, I'm basically referring to there as being right from the start to the end of a life cycle. So when we're talking construction and the construction life cycle, depending upon the stakeholder business that we're talking to at the time, the end-to-end aspect would be from the point that they can become involved to the point at which they hand off their obligations. So in an obvious construction project, a construction contractor would ultimately bid for and win a contract to build something, and then go through that full life cycle, everything that involves, and ultimately then most likely hand that over then to the client that they are delivering that asset back to. So by end to end, that's what I mean there.
Okay. So I mean, so you're talking about the beginning end of when a stakeholder is involved in a project, and so for the contractor at that early mobilization stage. Because the beginning end of a project is when the developer says, I'm going to build this building, correct?
Absolutely. So, end to end to a different stakeholder can mean something slightly different, or a different end to end. If we're considering a construction cloud instance for a real estate owner, then that would be a bit different, because their beginning point is is right at the conceptual ideas of a big design piece, and obviously they'll then go right through the design, ultimately tender out for construction, and then the asset would come back to them most likely, and then they will be involved in the operation and maintenance of that asset moving forwards. So their end to end is a far bigger life cycle. So depending upon the stakeholder you are, that would affect your end to endness for your.
Very good.
Just to quickly address your other question, which was around obviously these magical Ds that appear next to BIM the whole time. I think BIM is relatively well known as building information modeling. Now, it's been around for quite a while, but we started to see these numbers of Ds against it. So, a two-dimensional is basically drawings. Three-dimensional is when we start to consider bringing those drawings to life into 3D models, and how that helps, particularly at the design stage when 3D models are then created. Quite often at the construction stage, the 3D models would have already been put in place and evaluated and used to help ensure that the design is optimal. But when we're starting to talk about 4D and 5D and beyond, so when we start to introduce the time aspect, this is the 4th dimension. So you could imagine in relation to a 3D model, we start to talk about and integrate the scheduling and the planning aspect with regards to time. The 5th dimension being cost. So once we start to introduce the cost impact and cost evaluation and estimation and procurement strategy and that sort of thing, this is the cost when it all becomes interrelated back. And then even now we're starting to see these extra couple of dimensions appear, depending upon who you talk to. A 6D might be either sustainability or the carbon stuff. and a seventh dimension being the facility management stuff. They can sometimes be interoperable as to which is considered the sixth and seventh. But basically, they're additional aspects of data that are being drawn into the building information model and that principle in order to add additional value, more data into that single source of truth and help to inform all decisions along the way. So is that enough of a summary for you there?
Very much, very much. Because here at CTF, we talk a lot about technology, and we know that there are many construction companies that are working hard to implement technologies to support their business development, to reduce cost, as you say, to improve efficiencies, to improve safety, as Karan has mentioned. There are so many ways that we can utilize technology, but not all of the industry is fast to adapt or adopt technology. And, you know, in the introduction, we talked about what happens when some technologies failed. And honestly, I'm aware that there have been certain technologies that haven't lived up to the expectation of the contractor or the consultant, whoever is involved, the stakeholders associated to that technology. Unfortunately, we've seen a difficult time in the last 18 months or nearly 2 years with COVID-19, and it has retarded a lot of the business development moving forward, or has it? I mean, that's the question that I'd like to ask you. How are we moving forward with the adoption of technologies, especially in Saudi Arabia? And to kick off this discussion, I'd like to bring in Hassan Albalawi. Now, I met Hassan Albalawi at the Construction Technology Forums a couple of years ago, and we have remained close friends ever since, I think. But Hassan's the sort of guy that knows everyone, and he's the sort of guy that everyone wants to know. He's extremely enthusiastic about construction technology. And Hassan, thanks for jumping in with us at short notice, but I understand that WakeCap is a company that was established in the USA. You set up your operations in the UAE, but some time back, you made a very decisive decision to enter the Saudi Arabia market. And since then, I understand you've established quite a presence there. Could you explain to us this strategy, this decision for your company?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Phil. Definitely, you're a friend. Just to put it in the record. And thanks for the opportunity to share my thoughts on this very challenging subject, because construction is very challenging, and this is what kept me really, I would say, obsessed with this challenge and these problems. Every day we spend in construction, we understand the new dimensions. As Aref mentioned, there are a lot of dimensions that we need to look into, and I think as James and Karen mentioned as well, it's like the idea of coming with a single solution. Sometimes it's not it's not enough. You want to come up with, you want to understand what's going on, and then from that perspective, you try to take a shot on it. And this is exactly related to what we did in Saudi. The idea was figuring out a core problem, then find the place that we're gonna basically help us and take the risk really to basically adopt us in a way to try figuring out how to solve that problem, and then apply it. And then if that core problem is real and the solution is real, then it's gonna apply everywhere. So let me give you an example to explain what they just said. WakeCap, when we started, we were thinking to really build a solution that focuses on understanding what is going on in terms of the labor at the site. Labor is the largest and least understood cost in any construction project. And to really understand that, you want to know where they are, how much time they spend in the site. Just bringing a technology to the site was really, really challenging. Not to mention, bringing it from the top never worked. So we had to really make it work for the builders, not only the owners, or let's say, depend on the owner to mandate it. So we need to create that value, deal with all the technical challenges. So when I tried to do it in the US, I got lucky to meet some of the leaders in this market, where they told me, well, look for a solution, look for a place to really start any pilot. And this is when I got lucky to meet Aref and CCC basically willingness to really try the solution. So we started in Dubai because we got our first pilot there. That's the number one reason. And when we went there, I was like really not sure should I go, because honestly I didn't even know where should I start. So US was the easiest because I was there. So the construction leader in the US told me, just focus. If you have a pilot, go start there. And if your solution is there, I mean, if you solve the problem, it's going to be applying everywhere, because construction problems are similar no matter where you go. We got the opportunity to work with CCC and build in their domain knowledge to accelerate the development of our solution. 2 years later, we have the largest connected site in the world, the largest connected workloads in the world. We didn't even know that at that time until big players like Oracle, Autodesk started like really evaluating us at a global level, benchmarking us as the biggest site in the connected site anywhere in the world. So we were able to solve a lot of the challenges related to the scalability, related to the use cases, related to the strategy to how to enter the market. And by 2020, just before COVID hit, I actually made the decision to go there, to go to Saudi. And the reason for that was I have a solution. I found that the strategy to enter Saudi is really, I'm from Saudi. That was not enough for me to go to Saudi, but it was actually a business driven. But it was so beautiful to actually align the vision of our leader, especially Prince Mohammed, and his vision of really focusing on like, guys, dream even bigger. I mean, like, and this is when I see the scale of the market, was Dr. Bandar mentioned. These challenges, I was like, I didn't even know anything about construction until I got to Saudi to see the real challenges at scale. So it was a business-driven decision with a strategy that worked before in Dubai, that basically make the builder happier first, like the contractors, win them. And if you win them, then the owner will be even happier to actually see the benefit that usually comes at multiple X's when you have that efficiency. And this is exactly what we did. Now, a year later, after some success in terms of safety, efficiency, and productivity, adding value to the right stakeholder without really, this is one of the things that I was actually surprised to see. We were able to add safety and improve safety and productivity at the same time. Wearing a helmet, improve the safety compliance, knowing where you are and comply with that is just improving the safety. But at the same time, the contractor is really happy of not only buying it as a safety device, but to run more efficiently.
Very good. Hassan, we want to keep moving ahead because we've got 10 minutes, and please. We do want to get through to some questions from the audience. And if you do have a question, please send it to us specific to the team or anyone in particular. But entering the Saudi Arabia market, Hassan, has this met your expectation today?
Exceeded, actually. It exceeded my yep.
Okay. I'd like to ask the same question to Karan. You're a new technology. You have entered the Saudi Arabia market. Has the adoption of your technology met or exceeded your expectation?
I think I'll probably give the perspective on probably the other side of the narrative in terms of the challenges. And look, I think there is no doubt that we perceive that we have a technology that can meet a lot of the challenges that Saudi is facing from a housing gap perspective. And there've been a couple of factors that have probably hindered our initial plan. The first, obviously, and most pertinent being COVID. We were looking to run, have the machine in country from Australia last year. Now, I don't know if many of the panelists or the viewers are aware, but Australia has basically been in a national lockdown for the past year and a half. What that's meant is that we can't fly people in and out or machinery. What we've done in the meantime, though, Phil, is essentially operate in Australia, get better product market fit there, but also conduct tests in terms of building Saudi-style houses, building Mexican-style houses in our facilities in Australia. What that's meant is that we've been able to continuously improve, understand processes, while obviously planning ahead for landing in Saudi Arabia.
So your product is continually evolving. You can build brick walls today, but you want to build them faster and smarter and stronger.
And in the country, I think it's one thing to look at the videos, which I highly recommend everyone does, but seeing it in action, I would say it's no different to sort of what people would have seen when the first space shuttle launched. It's going to be a fundamental paradigm shift, and until you see it in front of you, you then, I guess, get to appreciate what that really means for the sector.
Yeah, Aref, you're a contractor. You've worked in the construction space for a long time. You've been associated with technologies. What's your view? Do you feel that construction industries moving ahead to adopt technologies as a general broad stroke statement? What's been happening in the last year and a half during COVID-19? Has there been more extensive evaluation? We've seen less project activity in some of these areas, but how's your read on this?
I like very much, Phil, that you couple the question with what happened during COVID, because that's a big transition. And the impact will be realized very soon. Definitely, we're only behind. We're only ahead of agriculture when it comes to digital transformation. We're one of the worst digital transformed industry in the world as construction. The norms haven't been improving for the last 50 years, while in manufacturing and other industry, it doubled the productivity in norms. So definitely, as an industry, we've been behind. And like BIM is an example, what James said, BIM is the third industrial revolution technology, not fourth. It's been there since the 70s. And now we preach that we have adopted BIM at large. This should have been, as an industry, adopted a long time. So definitely we've been behind historically. What we've seen in the last few years before even COVID is the fourth industrial revolution being adopted at slow pace in our industry. For the region, given that CTF now is for KSA, for the region, we've seen something new in the last few years. So the region has been more adopting Western technology. We see now, on top of which our WakeCap, of course, a technology that's being incubated from the region. So that's, I think, big thing. We cannot underestimate, Phil, in how this will help us transform the industry in our region. Second, the COVID-19 made us believe, like any other industry, that whenever we must do something, we can do it. So we can see far more receptive approach to fourth industrial revolution in the construction industry. We're much more hopeful, but still there's long way for construction to go to adopt. One last thing here, Phil, construction is far more complex than any other industries, or most of the industries. I mean, you cannot have a genius guy in Silicon Valley creating something like Uber, and suddenly they disrupt the construction and you wake up and see bridges being built alone. It's far more complex than that. That's why we bring the approach of committee, domain knowledge, and startup, putting them together to bridge the gap between these two. Construction, again, is very traditional, it's very complex, but we're very hopeful that with COVID-19 and the incubation of technology in the region, we see a big transformation very soon.
Very good. We have maybe 5 minutes left, and I'd like to just ask a few questions from the audience. And if you have any questions, please send them in to us. You can use your inbox or the questions and answers I'm sure you'll find there on the platform. Send us a question that you may have. But one question I'd like to ask the panel, please, anyone jump on board with this. It's an interesting question that is often asked. There are so many construction technologies that are available today. And I think that there's a lot of attack to the construction industry, all these different technologies. What is the process to evaluate and adopt technologies? Dr. Bandar, you probably had to evaluate a lot of technologies. Have you seen an approach to this? How have you been, evaluating new products, new technologies, new implementation?
Sure, it's all about, time and not in cost. Okay, what I mean by that, you need to look into the amount needed to assemble all these elements and components together. This is a major, factor that you need to take into consideration. And again, the maintenance needed. for these machines and equipment. It's very important to take these two factors into account in order to evaluate. Specifically, when we talk about automation, there are different types of automation. So the most difficult one is the fully flexible automation system. And this is what you want to focus on. You don't want to focus on a system that can produce just one type of a thing. You need to have something that's flexible to adapt and change within your production line and go forward with your developing your process and system as well. So this is one of the things, and this is what we have developed in our project. So it's a fully flexible, but in terms to adapt such a technology, you need to take into account how can we develop a design that can be, combined with such a flexible technology. So we have developed what we call a design language, makes it very flexible to change the design without interrupting the capability and the constraints of the machines. Okay, so this is something you need to take into consideration.
Okay, we talked earlier, guys, just about what happens if some technologies fail, and there is one very specific question that's been raised here, directed to CCC. Have you withdrawn from any of your investments in technology? Have you seen things that haven't worked? Do you have a strategy to cut bait and move on to something new, or are you working with the development of technologies for their improvement?
We always try things. That's my favorite question, but thanks. We always try things that fails. If we don't try things that fails, then we're not trying anything new. And this leads me to the fact that failure is part of the journey. We should accept failure. Nevertheless, we should collect the proper lessons learned and take corrective measures. So if we know that, for instance, artificial intelligence will add a value to construction, which it does, and the first 2-3 pilots in that phase, I've had 2 pilots in artificial intelligence with 2 different startups, and they both failed. And I'm looking forward for the third. I've learned a lot, and we will adopt it. So this is here. Let me just conclude by one thing. It's a cultural thing, accepting failure, Phil, and we should learn that this is a part of the journey. And the millennial generation will teach us one thing, if they teach us, is that once we have a purpose, we are accepting failure to move forward.
Very good answer. Thank you so much. Adoption of technologies can be a very daunting process for contractors. And I think that's probably some of the reason why we've seen a slow uptake, coupled with the last couple of years of COVID-19. I'm aware that a lot of contractors have spent this time evaluating construction technologies, and as they move forward with new projects, we're seeing a lot of projects that are in design, and so BIM, is on the forefront. But as we move forward with more and more projects mobilizing, I believe that we will start to see some of that construction technology involved more and more with the construction process. But there is one very specific question, and I'd like to finish with this. Just for a bit of a review, adopting technology. How are we finding this on site, your products? This question was specific for BIM, and so I'm going to throw this over to James, but I want you to be brief so that everyone can say goodbye. But how are you finding the implementation of the BIM technology for contractors? Is it an easy process or is it difficult?
Okay, so I think it's a really good question. Specifically for Saudi, we're personally pretty new to the Saudi market. So what I certainly can say for Saudi is that we've got a massive amount of inquiry coming out of Saudi Arabia at this point, which demonstrates to me the desire to implement construction technology to help optimize process and save that time, save that rework, be more sustainable, all the things I was mentioning kind of earlier on, Phil. But when it comes to implementing on site, I'd have to reference, a little bit broader than Saudi specifically.
Well, we don't have time for too much reference. Was that
Okay.
a yes or no question? Is it difficult to introduce BIM, or is it a process?
It's a process. It's not something you can do overnight, no.
Okay, are contractors looking for something that's easy to implement, or are they quite prepared to invest their time to develop the relationship with a technology? Aref?
Nothing is easy to implement, Phil. Nothing is easy in construction to implement.
That's correct. My point is, in order for us to move forward with construction technology, we have to be dedicated to implementing, to piloting, to developing all of the technologies. They aren't just off the shelf, ready to go. We are at the early stage of construction technology. And if a contractor is not prepared to work with the development of the technology, to customize it for their own purpose, then we're never going to move forward. Would you agree with that statement? I've heard it quite often. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to talk with you.